Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Christopher Ray Patton. Growing up in a small town in North Carolina, you're probably sometimes guessing, or maybe you're guessing right now, the kind of music a guy like me would grow up listening to. Again, reminder, small town in rural North Carolina, okay? You may be thinking country. First off, bite your tongue, clean out of your head. I don't do country. Never have, never will. My family never did. I didn't grow up listening to that. I grew up with a mom. It was just me and mom after the age of 5. And her vinyl collection, this is from a woman who went to church regularly. And I went to church with her for years, right? But here was the record collection. She had some Bob Seger. She's a white woman in the 80s. Yeah, she had some Bob Seger. Are you kidding me? Of course she did. And the Silver Bullet Band to boot, right? Did she have the Oak Ridge Boys? Yeah, she had the Oak Ridge Boys. She's a woman in the 80s. Yeah, she had the Oak Ridge Boys. Are they country? Sure, whatever. Country pop, maybe? I don't know. I guess that makes you feel better. Whatever. But she also had Queen. She had Zeppelin. And she had Kiss, all right? And she had some other bands too. And I'm like, if you see that collection, you would not think this was a woman that grew up in the rural South and went to church every Sunday. Foreigner was in that collection. Some bands that I grew up on and still enjoy and still appreciate their stuff to this day. I'm very happy that my mom had that. The word eclectic, or it may not work for you guys. I don't know. Maybe you'd listen to that and say, well, it's all kind of related. Fine. But for me, that was a different mix of music. It was not all one genre. Okay. It was a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I was very grateful to have that growing up. And Kiss was one of the bands that I kind of grew up with. And always enjoyed their stuff. And later when I started learning to play bass, learning instrumentation, things of that nature, learning to hear a song. And listen, kids, no one can teach you this. If you know how to play, you already know what I'm going to say. You can pick it out when you hear a song. It's insane. I can listen to the same song with someone that doesn't play at all. And I say, find the bass line. And honestly, they can't. Doesn't mean I'm smarter. It just means for whatever reason, my ear just naturally gravitates to that. Can't explain why, but you guys know Gene's your bass player here, got the big axe bass, the theatricality, the paint, the costumes, the fire breathing. And we're going to get into all that here today, man, because we never really dove into Kiss full time on an episode on the 6M. We're going to do it here today because today, of course, we're doing Kiss Alive, which I have to say that way because there's an exclamation mark at the end. Can't just say Kiss Alive. It's Kiss Alive, right? We're doing the first one here today, kids. So this should be fun, and we hope you enjoy. But before we get there, let's do this. Kiss Alive, right, is the 4th album overall and the first live album by American hard rock band Kiss, released on September 10th, 1975. It is considered to be their breakthrough and a landmark for live albums. The double album contains live versions of selected tracks from their first 3 studio albums, Kiss, Harder Than Hell, and Dressed to Kill. It was recorded at concerts in Detroit, Michigan, Cleveland, Ohio, Wildwood, New Jersey, and Davenport, Iowa on May 16th, June 21st, July 20th, and 23rd, 1975. The album's title was an homage to the 1972 live album Slade Alive by the English rock group Slade, a band that heavily influenced Kiss. The total runtime of this album, 72 minutes, 35 seconds, and the label, of course, if you grew up with Kiss, you know this from the vinyl. It's Casablanca. Are you kidding me? Produced by Ed Kramer. And this has got some great stuff on here, kids, and we can't wait to get into it. But that is your lowdown on Kiss Alive. So, Chris, we have talked about Kiss in passing, never dove into them before for an entire episode. So this should be fun. Have you always been a Kiss fan? We're talking like from little kid to this point, or did you find them later in life?
Since I was a kid, my dad was a Kiss fan, so kind of just grew up around Kiss and the face paint and the whole action of it. And as you know, as a pro wrestling fan, I don't think it gets more pro wrestling than Kiss as a band, right? So,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
yeah, so like kind of grew up around Kiss and have always enjoyed them. This album is great. It's one of my favorite Kiss albums. Um, it has my favorite version of my favorite song on it, which we'll get to later.
Oh,
But yeah, kind of
interesting.
grew up around it, and not necessarily vinyls, but tapes and CDs. And I have a lot of their vinyls now, but we're talking '90s, so a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the more of the vinyl stuff that my grandparents had growing up, who I lived with for the most part, were being from the South like you. A lot of Atlanta Rhythm Section, Almond Brothers, those kind of things
Mm-hmm.
was more typical. Your Molly Hatchets of the world.
Yeah. I'm heading down the road. I'm flirting with the. It's the only Molly Hatchet song I've ever known. I'm sure
there's
there's a bunch more. It's the only one I know.
there's like a PlayStation NASCAR game. I think it was like NASCAR '98, and this is back before they could fit tons of audio on a PlayStation disc, right? So it had "Flirting with Disaster" and then like two generic songs. So if
Right.
you raced like a full length race, like a 200 lap race or something, you would hear "Flirting with Disaster"
Why
like 30 times. So I'm very familiar with "Flirting with Disaster" because
does
of
that
that
sound so
game.
familiar to me? What's that game?
I think it may have been NASCAR '98. It's one of the first NASCAR
Interesting.
PlayStation games.
Interesting.
Um, but yeah, if you played any of those games,
Hmm.
or if you played that game, you would have heard "Flirt." It's kind of like Gran Turismo 2, where you hear "I Think I'm Paranoid" by Garbage like tons and tons of times if you're playing, because the game only had like 3 or 4 songs on it.
Sure. Man, growing up with the vinyl, because I grew up in the 80s, right? Like the early 80s and mid 80s and teenager a little bit later. But that Casablanca label on the vinyl is an absolute, I cannot think of any other band but Kiss when I see that label. No other band, honestly. And I think
It,
ELO was on that label, weren't they?
uh, you might be right on that. I'm not 100% sure. I do
Hmm.
know that the time that this album came out, which I guess we'll probably just get into, both Kiss and Casablanca were not doing very well financially, and the first
Hmm.
4 Kiss albums were not successes. So Kiss, Hotter Than Hell, Dressed to Kill, those albums were not big hits. So the whole idea of doing a live album was to try to do it cheaper. And if this album didn't hit, the label would have folded more than likely.
Hmm.
Probably the same thing with Kiss. It could have been the end of Kiss as a band, which sounds crazy. This album came out 40 years ago now.
Jeez. That's right.
So
Anniversary.
think about how much Kiss has done since this album came out, how big of a band, one of the biggest touring acts of all time. Um, you got the Kiss Cruise, you got the Kiss Psycho Circus that they did for a while. I mean, it's the merchandise kings themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's also another reason you compare them to wrestling. They're all about the gimmicks, brother.
Oh,
Uh,
for sure. Yeah. 50 years old this year, by the way.
oh, I said 40. It's 50. It's even more.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Jeez.
but
Crazy.
that's
Well, I
it's
know what
a
my favorite one is. We don't have to get to it right now.
your favorite song or your favorite album by
Favorite
Kiss?
song on this album, anyway.
Okay. I wonder if it's the same. We're gonna see. We're gonna see as we go through this.
Yeah, I can't help it. They're the one I'm listening to right now. I cannot get enough of this tune. I can't say it's my favorite Kiss song of all time. If it's your favorite Kiss song of all time and it's on this album, don't tell me. But if it's not, can you tell me? Or is it
Uh,
on this album?
so my favorite Kiss song of all time is on this album.
Okay, gotcha. All
So
right.
and the specific recording of this song from this album, because it does show up in other places,
Ah,
Kiss related.
um, I think Shout Out Loud is one of my favorites from Kiss Alive 3. I love Shout It Out Loud. I don't know why. There's something about the sound of it. Dude, I've always loved that tune.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
It's a real fun tune. It's got
it
some
is.
great guitar work in it.
Yeah. and we're going to talk about the band because, in my opinion, Kiss is the first four members. I don't care what anybody else says. And Chris, I respect the heck out of anyone that can play. And for the guys that came after them, kudos to them. It's nothing against them, but to me, Kiss is Paul, and it's Gene, and it's Ace, and it's Peter. That's me though.
It's one of those weird things where they've had better members over the years, though, at the specific instrument. But yes, I think at the root, at the core, it's those four. It's important. Eric Carr's probably I would consider him a way better drummer than Peter Criss. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, but Peter Criss also sung, and it's just kind of part of the core of the band, right? So I don't necessarily have. I mean, the favorite lineup is always going to be the original lineup for most things, right? I think most people would agree with that.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. And to be honest, a lot of that's probably attached to my childhood too. Like when they took the paint off and they released Unmasked, that album, I had that album, and that whole cover was like comic book art. The whole cover was them like going around in public with no paint on, and a reporter trying to catch them. I'm suddenly flashbacking. And because they wore that stuff constantly. If they were in public, they'd hide their face. They'd put like a handkerchief over their face or something, so nobody could see what they really look like. They live the gimmick, brother. So,
which by that album, Eric Carr would have been the drummer. He was the drummer from 1980 to 91 when he died of cancer. So that particular album is mostly Eric Carr. I think all of him on drums there. So Kiss is a weird band. I mean, but Peter Criss and Ace have all had their addiction issues. So that, I think that's a big part of why they have fallen in and out of the band over the years. Ace Frehley's new stuff is very, very cool. Like he's got a YouTube channel that's kind of weird. He just released a solo album. It's got a cover of Space Truckin' on it, which I always appreciate. So they're still, he's still doing stuff. But yeah, I mean, the replacements they get for the band are usually pretty good. Tommy Thayer's the current guitarist for them, and he's a great guitar player. There's something specific about Ace Frehley where he doesn't really play like a professional guitar player for a band. There's some sloppiness in his style that I actually kind of love. The first time I saw Kiss live, he tells this great story, and then he played a guitar solo, and it was awful. The guitar solo was awful, even as a Kiss fan. It was really bad.
Jeez.
And then he ended it with saying, "And I never had any guitar lessons."
Nah.
Which is really, really funny. But that could have just been an off night for Ace Frehley, because one of my favorite things about Kiss is for lack of a better term, the octave guitar solos or octave guitar riffs between him and Peter. I think that's one of the most unique things about the band. And you'll hear it in my favorite song. When we'll get to that, I'll get more in depth. But yeah, that's my funny. I've seen Kiss live. One of my funny I've seen Kiss live. That was a weird tour. It was when I was in high school. They were touring with Aerosmith. And they actually did the dual headline thing. So they would switch which band would headline depending, on what night it was. So they rotated in and out. But that was a really, really fun show.
And they're supposedly done for real now, right? Aren't they like actually done for real now?
I think that's what, I think that was what they were saying, is that it was the last ride. But then every time I watch a interview with Paul Stanley or something, he's like, "Oh, I'll never say never. I'm getting in shape." And so, who knows?
Gotta walk on those heels, man. I'm just saying. Ace was my favorite member by far. I don't know. I think Ace maybe is too much high praise. I hold this band in a different place because, again, growing up and always hearing Ace, I think Ace has a great voice. He is not Scott Weiland, of course, nothing like that, but I just think he has a great rock voice. To me, it was always sort of, he doesn't growl, he doesn't roar, he doesn't scream. He just, I just think it's a different sound. And that's how I've always appreciated his singing. Probably other people didn't, but I've always been a fan of that guy. So
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, I think the best singer in the band is probably Peter Criss,
mm,
which is odd for the drummer to do so much singing. And
right,
before this album, really had the only hit for them with Beth.
yeah,
So they're such a it's kind of such a strange band.
yeah, it
Um,
is.
leading up to this album and what they were putting out.
Well, look, kids, to the point of how we kicked this off. The story I've always heard, and the story they've told for years, and it's in several documentaries that you can find. Whenever you want to go check those out, I think VH1 had a great doc on them at one point. Um, so basically, their first three studio albums didn't cut it. They people would go to the live shows and have a blast and have the best time, and people would say to them, supposedly, "You guys sound amazing in live. It's the best show I've ever seen. You don't sound like that on the album. It sounds like a different band. Like, what's the disconnect?" And they didn't know, right? So, like, the quickest, easiest answer, as Chris said, it's cheaper to do live, and also you get that feel and you get that vibe. Like the way Paul's talking to the crowd through this album is so much fun. Like the way he's getting people into it and having them chant together. And I'm like, dude, that's pretty cool. Like that feels like a spontaneous in the moment that you don't get from a studio album, you know?
Yeah, it's a weird one too because it's live, but it's not fully live. There's a bunch of stuff that they went in and overdubbed
Yeah.
after the fact. They juiced the crowd noises and spots, but um, it's from several performances. You got Cobo Hall in Detroit, Convention Center in Cleveland, RKO in Davenport, Iowa, which is a weird place, and then the Wildwoods Convention Center in Wildwood, New Jersey. So kind of a unique set of venues there for a live album, and they're not the only band to do that as well. The Stones also famously doctored one of their live albums,
Mm.
but there's parts of this album that you can kind of tell that have been cleaned up or not necessarily from the same performance. But you get the legendary "You wanted the best, you got the best," the hottest band in the world,
Love it.
which has stuck with them forever. That was
Yeah.
their what MC J.R. Smalling was their road manager. That's his voice. They use it on this album, and they still sample it at the Kiss concerts today, as far as I
That's
know.
pretty cool. I've gotten into Thin Lizzy a lot lately, dude. Um,
I saw you posted some Thin Lizzy. I love Thin Lizzy. That's a great band. We should do something on them at some point. But yeah,
Whiskey in the Jar, like the first version I knew was Metallica's cover from Garage Days, and I thought I don't know if how much I really dove into this band, so I dove in to Thin Lizzy, and I'm like, wow, man, this is some really good stuff. Like I never didn't appreciate them, but just never dove in. But now, like I'm a major Thin Lizzy guy. So
I liked them since I was a kid, man. The first time I heard "The Boys Are Back in Town," it's just such a fun song,
mm,
right? Like it makes me happy every time I hear it. I like music like that. Like you hear a
sure,
song and just immediately have like a "hey, this makes me feel good" kind of feeling. And that's "Boys Are Back in Town," and that's definitely was the gateway drug, at least for me as a kid, getting into more Thin Lizzy. Which
right,
luckily my grandpa was into Thin Lizzy, so I didn't have to go that far to get more Thin Lizzy in my life.
right. Well, kids, we've got 16 songs here, and if you've ever heard us review an album, we take a lot of time on each track. Don't know if we're going to do that here today, but I don't want us to do anything injustice either. But here's what I thought we'd do, Chris. I think maybe we tackle two at a time, possibly three, depending on where we are on the album. But on that note, the first two tracks on the album are Deuce and Strutter. Deuce comes in at 354, Strutter comes in at 322. Two of Kiss's most recognizable songs, I would say, and they've got an archive of instantly recognizable tunes they're kind of known for. I would consider both these songs signature Kiss songs. What do you think?
For sure, Strutter is one of the best songs in the Kiss library, in my opinion.
Mm,
It's not my favorite on this album. We haven't gotten there yet. Deuce and Strutter, I think, are the two best songs on this side for sure.
mm,
Hotter than Hell is great as well, but for sure, dude, starting it out hot with Deuce and Strutter. I know a lot of complaints about their first three albums is some of the better songs are at the end of the album. So if you're trying to listen to the album as a whole, which it makes me wonder if that went into when they were planning this album out, was this just their set list for those cities, or did they move some of these tracks around? I haven't ever seen anything on that.
Interesting. Dude, that's not a bad theory because it would make sense. You'd start the concert off strong and then hit with a couple that maybe weren't as well known, like 4 and 5. Well, 4 is known, but like 5 and 6, yeah, and then into a few others that maybe aren't played as much, and then you lead into into 12, 14, 15, into more of the well-known songs. That makes a lot of sense, actually. What do you think about the instrumentation on Deuce and on Strutter? What, in your opinion, I know it's kind of weird taking two at the same time, but what makes each track, kind of stand out? Or are they just sort of, this is Kiss's style, this is what they do kind of thing?
It's very much just Kiss's style, right? They're a straight ahead rock and roll band is the best way to put it. And a lot of their riffs and instrumentation are similar. Well, you get the exception on this album a little later on. There's a couple of exceptions, but Kiss, they have a very familiar sound regardless of what track you're listening to.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as a criticism as someone that really likes Kiss, but I could see if you're really into like jazz, for instance, or real technical musicianship, like if you're really into power metal or something, this is probably not going to be the band or album for you.
Well, look, we've we've mentioned AC/DC as being that band that, like, you change a few chords and you've got their next song, or play the chords in a different, you know, uh, and you've got, it's just the same. No, I won't say the same song. I really enjoy AC/DC. I love playing their stuff too, but like, if we're being honest, a lot of their stuff is, kind of listen, Oasis, in my opinion, a lot of their stuff was interchangeable. Collective Soul, and I enjoy all three bands. It's not a criticism, but like, you kind of think, is that maybe the same? Like, Oasis has two or three off the top of my head that are so close. I'm like, you guys didn't even try on that one. Like, you just wrote different lyrics and slowed it down a half step. I'm not stupid, man. You know what I mean?
No,
Anyway.
I will say out of the first two songs on this album with Deuce and Strutter, to me, I love that song. I love the guitar work by Ace on that song. I think there's some really neat melodies going on through the verse as Paul is singing. But the big thing about Kiss, to me, is the guitar work between their rhythm and lead guitar player. They fit together like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's great.
So good. I just further proof it, what's weird? Tell me if you think I'm off base here. Like, you're a musician. It's one of those things where it's like you sort of always feel like the bassist and the drummer are sort of that's it. Like, you had those two guys have to be in sync. They're carrying the band. You got the pretty dude up front shredding, and he's amazing. You might have another pretty dude on lead vocal, but your bass and your drum, man, those guys had to be in lockstep, and that's the backbone of a good band, right? But like, can we say that Gene's bass playing is the backbone of Kiss albums? Can we really say that?
I think you can on certain tracks. It's not on this album, but like God of Thunder is pretty much all
God of Thunder. I knew you were going to say that. I agree with that. Yeah.
And I would say specifically on this album, when we get to my favorite song on this album, the bass is very important and does some really neat things. It's almost like because they're keeping that straight ahead rock and roll feel in a lot of their stuff, they're not doing as much as they probably could. But overcomplicating things, I don't think necessarily would make any of these songs any better. So it's that there's always a fine line there, right? Like, I'm trying to think of the words to put it in. I think if you're just doing something to do it, there just because it's technical doesn't necessarily make the song any better.
Sure.
So you get a lot of simple like 4/4 stuff with Kiss, right? There's not going to be anything out of the ordinary, but like you said, the same thing can be said about AC/DC or any of what I would consider like just straight ahead arena rock bands.
Yeah. Um, well, I honestly, I prefer Strutter over Deuce if it's me. Um, that's what I prefer. Because I mean, I like Deuce fine, but I think Strutter is the better tune. But those two ring a bell for me. I can't say because I want to do 3 and 4. 3 is Got to Choose at 3 minutes 40 seconds, and 4 is Harder Than Hell at 3 minutes 29 seconds. Of the two, I know Harder Than Hell much more than I know Got to Choose, but Got to Choose is a great little song, man. Like I really enjoy it, dude. What do you think about these two?
Hotter Than Hell, I listen to more often, and it comes up with me just randomly singing it here when I'm outside. Because in Georgia during the summer, for the people that don't live here, it's humid and it is definitely hotter than hell. So you will see me walking around the yard singing that song quite often. Got to Choose, I hadn't heard in a very long time until I listened to this album today in prep for the show. It's a fun little tune. I think it's the weakest. To me, it's the weakest song on side one because I like Firehouse a little bit better. But yeah,
it's a little poppy too, isn't it? Got to Choose.
And this, good start. Good start for this double LP. It's crazy to think that 50% of this album, I think, is what Gene and Paul have said was retouched, where guitars were either overdubbed or things were changed or things were juiced. Because you can't really, I mean, they did a really good job of hiding it for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, by the way, I think Harder Than Hell is probably one of their best songs of all time.
It's a good one.
You know what I mean?
It's a fun song.
Yeah. I like it a lot. I've always liked that one. I mean, it's a good point that it's a heck of a way to start off. Your first 4 tunes, they don't let up. I don't think anything lets up on this album. Straightforward, and Kiss did their share of ballads. You mentioned Beth earlier, and they had the disco era, which we don't have to necessarily talk about. But
I Was Made for Loving You is another song where Gene Simmons' bass line is carrying the song throughout, because that is just part of disco music in general. It also has some of the best Ace Frehley guitar licks in it, coming in and out of the I Was Made for Loving You section of the song. Not to spend too much time on I Was Made for Loving You, but
no.
I have more of a respect for that song than most people do.
Dude, did we talk about the Fall Guy movie?
I don't know if we did.
Oh, dude. So it's got, and now I'm blanking on his name, Ryan Gosling in it. I think Ryan Gosling can do just about anything. I really enjoy his work. I think the other guys, is it the other guys or the good guys? I always get those two movies mixed up. The one he did with Russell Crowe. It's here on the 6M, by the way, in the archives. It's a great freaking movie. But, dude, that movie's freaking terrible. Fall Guy is horrible. Just awful. And they've got that tune, the Kiss disco tune. And, dude, they play it. And 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 it was like about the midpoint of the movie, I'm looking around going, oh, my God, they're playing this freaking song again. Like, are they just trying to get their money's worth? Did they get a discount? What happened here?
Trying to get their money's worth. They read the stories about WCW and their licensing deal with Kiss.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not into that one. I just can't. That's not to say that all the stuff from that era is crap, because it's not to me. But yeah, I can't get into that one. So
I like that song, but I haven't sat through the movie and had to hear it 15 times in a row. Or
you don't need to just to see if I'm right. You do not want to watch that movie. I'm telling you.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Man, it's just not good. But no, it's heck of a way to kick it off, like you said. And I don't want to not do any of these tunes justice, but it's a fairly big album. Like I said, I do enjoy Got to Choose. I liked it more than I remembered for some weird reason. But I think you're right. I think it is sort of the weakest thing. Was that sort of a precursor of what was to come with their pop and disco stuff, you think, or am I reading too much into it?
that goes back to like I, you have 3 albums before they record this, so some of that material may. I don't know what album that song is off of, but I would be curious. Let me look and see. Look that up right now, because some of the songs are. So that's off. Yeah, that's off hotter than hell. So they played those back to back. Um, there's a weird thing with Kiss because Beth was such a hit where I don't know that they went full into the rock and roll thing headed into this album yet, because that being their bigger hit, that they may have still been trying to write some poppier or radio friendly songs. Which is kind of funny because the song that kind of gives this album its notoriety and pushes it, which this album was not like a number 1 hit right off the bat, but the last song that on the album is really what pushed this album forward, and it is completely opposite of Got to Choose.
Right. Would you be surprised to know that this album only went gold in the United States? 500,000 units. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I expected, but I would have expected more than just gold, you know?
I thought it was more than gold. That is crazy.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it didn't go platinum. I mean, because it hit number 9 on the Billboard Top 200.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. You have the Kiss Army, right? So it's kind of, you get like a weird thing where it's almost like everyone knows Kiss, but how many people buy Kiss albums? I guess
that is
one of those bands.
That's a great point, dude. Like when you've got some other much stuff to buy with their faces on it, you know, from bedding to hats to T-shirts to. I think they did cologne. I'm sure they did condoms at one point. You know, Kiss put their logo on everything. Gene Simmons, the businessman, right? By the way, are you a member of the Kiss Army there, Chris?
I do not have the official membership card. I mean, the other thing to this that keep in mind is that they kind of undercut themselves because if this album hit number 9 in 76.
Mm-hmm.
Kiss Alive 2 is released the next year in 77.
Oh, yeah.
So Kiss Alive 2 has, you know, Detroit Rock City on it famously. Dr. Love, it's got Beth, it's got Shout It Out Loud, God of Thunder, Christine 16, Love Gun. It probably has more hits on it than this album.
Yeah,
so I wonder how much of that played into it. They were both produced by Eddie Kramer, both of those. I think he did most of Kiss's stuff after Kiss Alive.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
So it's basically by putting 2 live albums out back to back at the height of your popularity, that kind of causes that.
What about
while this album was like kind of a blessing for them, I don't know, outside of the album, the Unmasked album that you were talking about, it kind of locked them into their first 3 albums, rotating those songs in and out until Love Gun was released, I guess.
You know, I didn't know this bit either. We're kind of bouncing around here, but so the I Was Made for Loving You tune was on Dynasty. And Anton Fig performed almost all the percussion on the album while Peter Criss recovered from an automobile accident. So Anton Fig was the drummer on David Letterman's Late Night Band, and was also the drummer in Frehley's Comet. So
yeah, I didn't know that either.
That was some nerddom that I've always had in my head, but I did not know he played on the Kiss album. That's pretty cool. So
Dynasty is after they released. Is that after they released the solo albums from each member of the band?
Which were basically just group albums, right? They just another way to cash in, I think.
Yeah. This is why a lot of people. That's also why a lot of people have a problem with Kiss, right? Is because of stuff like this: 3 live albums in like less than 10 years.
Yeah, cashing in, man. But
I mean,
Look,
some of that is on the label as well.
sure.
We're gonna get you get the live Kiss albums, but you also get a Kiss movie in there as well. There was a lot of Kiss during this time period, which is why when you said that album only went gold, it's kind of crazy. But maybe it's because they were churning out so many things that it just became like you just buy the new thing and not don't go back and get the other stuff. I don't know.
I mean, did you see Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park?
I have never seen it all the way through. I've
Ah!
only seen clips of Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
Yeah.
Doesn't Ace Frehley have like Cyclops? Which one has Cyclops eyes? Like
Oh,
X-Men
I
laser
don't
eyes.
remember. I think Peter actually turns into a cat or something. I don't remember. It's
Which is kind of a
freaking
cool
weird.
power if you could turn into like any big cat, like a lion,
I guess.
tiger, whatever.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
not
It's
as
a
cool
lot.
as being able to shoot lasers from your eyes, but
Well, no. I mean, needless to say, this movie was not exactly Hard Day's Night, kids. That's what I can tell you. So
uh,
let's look at tracks 5 and 6. Number 5 is Firehouse at 3 minutes 57 seconds, and Nothing to Lose. I know Nothing to Lose at 3:36, far better than I know Firehouse. What's your take on these two?
I like Firehouse. I think it's a cool song. There's some pretty neat guitar riffs in that song.
Mm,
I also going into this probably have listened to Nothing to Lose more,
mm,
but it's still we're still riding like pretty quick start to this album.
mm-hmm. You know, it was only several years ago, like very recently, that I read what Nothing to Lose is about because I didn't
Yeah,
know.
it's kind of a problematic song in
Kind of a problem.
2025 lens.
Because listen, once you know,
That's the other thing about Kiss is
you'll
their
never
lyrics
hear it the same
sometimes.
again.
It was noontime. It wasn't what is it? It was noontime, downtime, break time, summertime, Miller time. I think is the first line of that song.
Oh man,
Right?
yeah,
Yes,
Nothing
no.
Loses. Oof.
Uh,
Which, by the way, great little song. But when you hear the lyrics, you're just kind of singing along, and then you find out what it's about. You're like, oh God, I can't sing this out loud again.
yeah, it's there's some album reviews. More, I was going through this and looking at some album reviews before we talked about it, and a lot of them point to this song on this particular album being like, this is problematic. So it dug deep, and I was like, well, what were people saying about the song when it came out?
Sure.
And Reception Cashbox, which is a magazine out of New York, was like one of the finest new heavy metal bands to come out of New York in some of their debuts here, with a very heavy, very tasty rocker reminiscent of Deep Purple, yet to stand freely alone against its own merits with big gutsy vocals and heavy instrumentation. Um, it's so, and then they point to this song being like one of the highlights.
Wow.
So it's kind of it's always kind of funny to go back in time and look at what was the reception then. But obviously this must have worn on them because they stopped playing it in the 80s.
Oh, I didn't know
So
that.
they really didn't play this song much live apparently
Mhm.
after that. And I wonder how much of that has to do with like what the song is about versus just we have other stuff that people are more familiar with.
Mhm. I always thought that the piano was an interesting choice because when you hear it, you're like, "Wait, was that a piano?" Like, you know what I mean? Because your ears don't expect a piano to come in. Uh, which, yeah, it's at least in the actual recording of the song. Is the piano? This is a dumb question. I was just listening to this today. Is the piano in the recording?
It's a good question. This song is on MTV Unplugged, though. If you've ever watched the Kiss MTV Unplugged, they do play
That is
it
a
there.
great unplugged, dude. I'm a big fan of that unplugged. I listened to that for a long time. I also listened to that Kiss tribute album that Garth Brooks is on, of all people. Yeah, of all people, I say it like that, but
He does some very unique covers here and
yeah.
there. Like he does a cover of uh, "Time in a Bottle," the Cat Stevens song,
Oh wow.
and it's really good. Like I was like, "There's no way he's gonna play the guitar part because I've never seen him play anything that intricate." And it sure as does.
Well,
So
and
he surprises me here or there sometimes.
speaking of problematic, he is now problematic as well. Garth
Yeah,
done some stuff.
with
So
his hairdresser apparently.
yeah, it's not awesome. Yeah. Well, hey,
Should
you
have known
know.
something was suspicious there when a bald man has a hairdresser, but
Well, Phil and I, shout out to Phil Lindsay, we did Payback, and you know who stars in Payback, and it's like, well, how do we keep doing stuff when it stars people that's not awesome anymore? And it's like, well, do we focus just on the stuff they did, like that we enjoyed, or do we mention other things? Like, yeah, it's kind of messed up.
yeah, I don't know. Like, you have to look at the art versus the person, I guess, and try to separate the two. That always becomes kind of hard.
Yeah, it's not easy sometimes, especially if it's the bigger the project or whatever, the more light they have on them. But interesting.
Boink Studios is the home of Tom Clark's main event, Tom Clark's 6M podcast, and Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. Visit the site today for links to every podcast platform, social media, special announcements, and a lot more. Check out the site and bookmark today, boinkstudios.com.
Look, going back to this, and by the way, that Garth Brooks song on the Kiss cover album, I can't remember what they did now. Um, Hard Luck Woman. I had to sing it in my head. I couldn't remember what they did. It's an excellent cover, and supposedly they asked him to be on it. Don't know how they knew him, but he said, "I'll be on it on one condition: is if you play with me on the song." So they did. It's a great little cover too, by the way. It's all acoustic, so not bad.
I think my
So,
favorite Kiss cover I've ever heard is "God of Thunder."
say,
Iced Earth did this album called "Tribute to the Gods,"
oh, okay, cool.
and they do a couple of Kiss covers on there, but they do "God of Thunder" is one of them.
I thought you were going to
They do
mention
"Burning for You," which is
the rock honors on VH1.
yeah, so the
Uh,
Number of the Beast. So it's got some all of the things that you would think would be there should be there as far as a tribute to heavy metal gods go. But
mhm.
shout out to them since we're talking about covers.
Did you see the rock honors on VH1 for Kiss?
I did not.
Dude, so they cover God of Thunder. It is Rob Zombie. Ace Frehley comes out to play with them. Slash is on stage. Scott Ian. Tommy Lee's on drums. Gilby Clarke is out there. And I think I may be missing somebody else. They do God of Thunder, and it's the best. It's effing phenomenal. I can't even talk about it. Like, it's so phenomenal. Like, the crowd's into it. They crushed it, absolutely killed it. And I'm like, this band should go on tour. These guys are great. You know what I mean? So, yeah, anyway, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I guess it's kind of. I mean, another thing about this album, just the album itself that we didn't
mhm.
talk about, is even the photo on the front of the album is doctored. So there's no
Are you
fire.
kidding? Shut
There's
up.
no fire in the original photo.
What?
Yeah, I found that out today. I did not know that was a thing.
Now,
They
see, I
added the
could have went my
flames
whole life and
because-
not been told.
They added the flames because the original photo looked too plain, and that it added to the dangerous, overtop nature of their concerts.
Before the days of Photoshop, kids, Kiss was doing some stuff.
So, and then after they release Alive 1 and Alive 2, you get a whole slew of artists that release a lot like live albums that are kind of like this. Probably one of the more famous ones being Cheap Trick at Budokan.
Mm.
But you also get Unleashed in the East by Judas Priest, and Iron Maiden's Live After Death, and AC/DC's If You Want Blood, You've Got It. So you get kind of all of the big, well, three of the big metal bands at the time doing metal hard rock, because AC/DC kind of more hard rock, but that is a whole different conversation itself.
So how'd they do the fire on the cover?
I don't know. It didn't say. I'm assuming that I have no idea. Like, what did you like? Now you would just say Photoshop, but I guess they had someone take 2 photos and put them together. I don't know.
I
have
guess
no
they would
clue.
have to, right? Yeah. Well, it's like, who was it? The Slippery When Wet album cover. You know the story of that with Bon Jovi, I'm sure. But they the cover they had, the record label rejected it. I think it was, I can't remember the actual story, so forgive me. But basically, the cover you see for Slippery When Wet was John Bon Jovi grabbed a black trash bag, they sprayed water on it, and he took his finger and wrote the word "Slippery When Wet," and that's the freaking album cover. I'm like, are you kidding me? Because he was ticked off to the point of like, look, you want an album cover? I'll get you a free. And he goes and does it. They photograph it, and now it's considered like classic album cover. You know what I mean?
It's so like that's such a Spinal Tap story.
Right?
Does it get any blacker?
Yeah. Oh, it's a great
funny.
story.
It's great. So we're at what? We're aside to Come On,
We
Love
are-
Me and Parasite, right?
Come On, Love Me and Parasite. Again, if you cornered me and said name 2 Kiss songs, I probably would not say Come On, Love Me and Parasite, but that's me talking.
These are, to me, the weakest songs we've hit so far.
I agree.
And then it picks back up with She. In fact, if I was listening to this album, I could potentially skip side 2 completely.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Be just fine. I might just go straight to side 3 here.
I kind of feel like
100,000 Years you have to be there for because it just has an incredible drum solo.
Sure.
Which is why that side is shorter than the others.
I kind of feel like Parasite's stronger, a bit stronger than Come On and Love Me.
I would agree with that.
If nothing else, if for no other reason, the guitar work in the end. Excellent work. Yeah. Are we getting a pattern here? 6 or 8 songs in. Are we hearing it's the same? It's repetitive. Are you getting that 8 songs in? I know you're a fan anyway, but like, are you hearing? This is kind of the same, or do you think it's different enough? What do you think?
I mean, I think Kiss has a formula for sure.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's very specific. And a lot of the things that stand out about Kiss is the thing that is Ace Frehley, who, inspired people like Dimebag Darrell, for instance. So I think it's one of those things where there is definitely a formula to Kiss songs. And if you don't like one Kiss song, you're probably not going to like a lot of other Kiss songs.
That's a fair statement. Yeah, that's a fair statement. So we were clocking these. So let me backtrack and say Heart of the Hell was 3 minutes 29, Firehouse 3:57, Nothing to Lose 3:36, Come On Love Me 3:04, and Parasite 3:35. Let's go to She, because absolutely picks back up. It almost does not sound like a Kiss song in the beginning.
Right.
Right? I mean, I was just saying it's too repetitive, but honestly, She does not sound. If you played that for anybody, unless they know the band, they probably would not know that's Kiss playing, dude. I mean, I really dig this song a lot, man. I always have.
Yeah, and I think that maybe that's why it slots in here, right? Is that they're trying to break that up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? I
Because
think this song is about getting fellatio, by the way. I could be wrong. I know she's going down, down, down. Everybody knows she's so good.
I mean, maybe they meant she's going downtown, like she's going to go buy some groceries, and she's really good at saving coupons and saving money.
You would think that, but then the next lyrics are, doing well for others, she doesn't really know. The powers are within her as long as she takes off her clothes.
Well, maybe it's a hot day, right? I don't know.
I know she's going down, down, down. Everybody knows she's so good.
I mean, but again, you got AC/DC, like Ball Breaker, hard as a rock. You know what I mean?
Just pointing out, maybe those Mothers Against Kiss.
Juvenile nonsense. But, it's, I don't know. Yeah.
Which we have not
Juvenile
talked about,
nonsense.
but They did do Detroit Rock City, the movie. Were you a fan of that?
Of the movie?
Yeah, the Detroit Rock City movie with Edward Furlong.
It's been so long since I've seen it. I liked it. It's been years since I've seen it though.
Same
Why?
for
What's your
me.
view on
I remember liking it, but it's been a long time since I saw it.
Role Models jumps out at me for Kiss because of the one. Was it the one? As a kid's got an obsession with Kiss, or is it one of the guys I think loves Kiss, can't get enough of them, and then they do the thing with the role playing at the end of the movie. It's got Paul Rudd in it. You know, good flick. Have you seen that one?
I'm trying to remember if I have or not. There's so many of those like comedies with Paul Rudd that I may be confusing it with one of the others. During that time.
it's got McLovin in it.
Sean Willem Scott, right?
Yes.
Yes, I have seen that. Elizabeth Banks. They had a crew where like they kept a lot of those people together in movies, like Seth Rogen and Elizabeth Banks and Paul Rudd. It seemed like there was a lot of stuff where they ended up in the same movies there. That's why I said it, like that time period. A lot of those movies kind of came out around the same time, so I didn't want to confuse it.
And a lot of it was Judd Apatow, the director. They were working with him, and he did several of those films with them.
Right.
So we've covered some of those films here. Yeah, I enjoyed She. I think it's a good track. I think it rebounded nicely from 7 and 8, honestly.
I'm still thinking about the lyrics of the song.
By the way, She is 6 minutes and 54 seconds long.
Which makes the lyrical content be like, does the song need to be 6 minutes long?
Right, yeah. Just in case you didn't know, we're going to say it again. We're going to do it some longer too, you know. Yeah. It's one of the longest songs on the album. It's like the third maybe longest. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. We go from that to number 10 and 11. 10 is Watching You at 3 minutes 50. And then when 100,000 Years at track number 11 at 12 minutes, 9 seconds. 12 minutes and 9 seconds, in case you weren't paying attention. Longest song on the album is the 100,000 Years. But it's 100,000 Years, Chris. It takes a while to tell the story. So what about Watching You and 100,000 Years? I think 100,000 Years is stronger than Watching You, but what do you think of both of these together?
100,000 Years is fun because of the drum solo.
Yeah.
So you're kind of just there for the drum solo. Watching You, it's one of those ones that's like, it's there. Coming out of She into Watching You, you're kind of like, it's there. Yeah. Also, She generally is only like 4 minutes long on the album. But I guess the live version's juiced a little.
Sure. I always thought 100,000 Years was the guys just kind of showing off, especially Peter, of course.
For sure. It's Peter's big moment, man. That's where the drum riser has to come up and the fireworks got to go off. And the parts of Kiss that you can't see while listening to an album are all taking place, right?
Sure. Got to give him a show, man. How many times have you seen Kiss live?
3 times.
Wow. That's crazy. Great show every time, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's even if you're not a huge Kiss fan, going to see you can't now, but seeing one of their shows is an experience, and I've recommended it to people that weren't big Kiss fans, and they've went and had fun. One of my friends, Johnny, he is more into like jam bands and stuff. He's like, I just can't go to a Kiss show. Convinced him to go. It was like Kiss, Poison, and someone else, and he had an absolute blast. He ended up going into that like thinking he would like Poison the best out of all of the bands, and then he was like, nah, Kiss is just kind of special when you see him live. Like it's a lot of energy too. The diehard Kiss fans, they turn up, and it's a fun show. It's a really fun show. I would have loved to have gone on one of the Kiss cruises. I think that would have been a real unique experience.
Yeah, I mean, we've got other themed cruises over the years, like Jericho Cruise, and there's been some others. I love the idea of it. Look, we've talked about the commercialism of the band and like Gene's entrepreneurial spirit, we will politely say. Is it too much? Do you think there's a Kiss coffin at one time, man? The Kiss coffin. Like, how far is too far? Do you think the answer is screw it, go as far as you want to. It's just music. But like,
Well, I mean, I
I
think
don't
it's
know,
one of those
man.
things
I
where
don't
if
know.
people are
They're
still
not
buying it.
exactly writing. These aren't exactly Beatles songs, right? Is what I'm trying to say. No disrespect, but like these songs don't exactly lend themselves to. And now they Grammy for the best song. Maybe not. So like, what's it matter if they go too commercial? Do you know what I mean? Is it too much?
Well, I mean, I think like I said, I think it's one of those things where it's like if people will buy the merch, why not put it out?
Yeah.
Like, what's the? I know that the Kiss coffin wasn't buried in one of the Kiss coffins.
I don't know if I knew that. Was he?
I'm pretty sure. I'll double. Yeah, I'm
Wow.
pretty sure.
We talked before about he was buried with Eddie's 5150 guitar too.
Right. Two of his inspirations, man. Ace
Yeah.
Frehley and Eddie Van Halen.
What killed Dimebag Darrell again?
He was shot on stage.
That's right. Jesus, how did I forget that?
Right. Yeah. When he was playing for Damage Plan. He had
Of all the ways
actually
to go.
just played here with Damage Plan either 2 or 3 weeks before that happened.
Wow.
The officer that took down the gunman in that story had PTSD after, and he's done some interviews talking about it. It's kind of a crazy story in its own right.
Oh wow. Yeah, I mean, it's funny how I was having a conversation like this the other day. Stuff in movies is so much nonsense that like in real life, like you just said, PTSD from that. Like it happens all the time in movies. You know what I mean? Save the day and stuff. Move on to the next thing. You're like, yeah, it's not real life. Like people are truly traumatized by things, and that stays with them forever and forever. Like no way to really get certain things out of your head. You know what I mean? I imagine so.
It may have been it may have been Hell Yeah. I can't remember which band. It was either Damage
Yeah.
Plan or Hell Yeah. One of the two bands he was playing with when he was shot. So just in case people in come to you and they're like, "What is he talking about?" Just a heads up. I don't remember that right offhand, but yes, that is the story. But and yeah, he was buried in the Kiss casket. It was actually donated to them by the guy who created the Kiss casket, I guess. Pulling up the wiki, which is the Warp Wizard, a sign and graphics solution located in Noonan, Georgia. So that's the first. I guess the people that are currently doing Kiss caskets. If you want a Kiss casket,
Well, I mean, I think I'm good. But what a way to go out. You know what I mean? Like, what a cool thing. You know what's even funnier is if you're just a casual fan, but you're like, here's what I want. Be sure it happens. And then like everyone shows up. Is he in a Kiss coffin? Like, I don't know. That's very, very funny to me.
I think it definitely get some laughs from people, right?
That'd be the thing. Like, no, you don't want anybody sitting around crying. I don't know. It's weird.
Okay, so yeah, the casket was donated by Gene Simmons.
There you go.
Was the story. So that's okay. Now that we got that all sorted, the Kiss casket. Kiss condoms are weirder than the Kiss casket to me.
I would think so. I don't know, dude. I don't know.
Kiss fans don't get laid.
Nah. Oh my! I wasn't gonna say that.
I'm kidding. It is. They're definitely a dude band, though. There's not a lot.
They're definitely a dude band. And look, their fans, not for nothing, are hard freaking core. Like, don't know about now, maybe, but at one point in time, they were deadly serious about their devotion to this band. Like, in defense of people, because I've always been into comic books and been a music guy and everything, so I understand fandom, and a pro wrestling fan, of course, like you are. But I understand when something speaks to you, it's almost like this is for me. Like this is all for me. Whoever wrote this, whoever acted in this, whoever sang this, God, do they know me? Like this is my story. This is who I am. Like. Dude, I get it, Chris, to a certain degree. Like when you connect, the deeper you connect with something, the more attached you're going to be for a long time, maybe your whole life, man.
That's true. I was looking around to see if I had any Kiss merch and if I was guilty, and I am. I have a Kiss Jack in the Box, which I'll send you a picture of later.
Oh,
that I just
nice.
saw on the shelf. So you press it and it plays. It like Gene actually pops out of the jack in the box and plays a Kiss song. I don't know that if the sound still works on it, but I will. I'll send some photos of that later. So we're here. We've made it to my favorite song on the album, which is Black Diamond.
So Black Diamond at 5 minutes 51 seconds. So that's your favorite one, yeah? It's a great song, dude.
It's my favorite Kiss song in general, and my favorite version of the song is off this album. It's incredible.
Wow. It's a great song. It's almost like they will choose a random song to just blow your doors off. Like, like they'll just have a weird song like Nothing to Lose. You're like, wait, what are they singing about? And then they'll do something that sounds like maybe they're taking this stuff seriously after all. Like Black Diamond sounds to me like we're going to take this seriously. I don't know. Maybe it's the way I'm hearing it. Why is this song so great, you think?
I absolutely love the main riff from the song, and then Ace Frehley's guitar solo is absolutely incredible in this one. And the visual when you see them play this one live is always fun. It's just, I don't know, it's a kick track. Starts out a little slow and then gets going. You also get the where they it kind of stops and you get the out on the streets of living, which is great. I don't know, it's fun. It's different than their other songs on this album as well. Like you were saying, you get kind of the big crescendo at the end. It just feels important.
It does actually
to a lot of their other songs. Also, like I said, one of my favorite songs to see them play live, which helps, right? Like you get the Ace Frehley rocking back and forth on his knees, shredding the solo. It's always fun.
Yeah. Ace always has a particular way of playing where he's like, you know what I mean too. That stance that he has, it's a very particular stance that he has when he plays, for sure.
And you get I'm gonna give some credit. You get Peter Criss is singing this song, right? He's going to town on the drums, and then you get the awesome bass line from Gene that's like do 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 do. It's just awesome. It's by far my favorite Kiss song and favorite song on this album.
Excellent. The way it wraps up is great. The way it wraps up, you're like, you should have just ended the album with this.
Yeah, which makes you think that maybe side 4 would have been their encore if you're looking at this as a set list.
Yeah.
Which would make sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Grand finale. God, it just sounds like a grand finale at the end.
Yeah, it's so good. I love that song so much.
So we go next to track 13. This is 3 minutes, 46 seconds. Rock Bottom. And also Cold Gin at number 14, 7 minutes, 17 seconds. Cold Gin is my favorite tune on this album.
I'm surprised by that. I thought we were both going to land on Black Diamond. Cold Gin is a great song.
I love Black Diamond, but Cold Gin is just something about it that I freaking love it. You know me, I'm a straight edge guy. So like, I don't care about the lyrics or anything. I've always loved that tune, dude. And dude, Rock Bottom, talk about things starting off. Again, Rock Bottom starts, you're like, who's this band again? Like what?
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know, man. To me, some of this album is, when you listen to it all the way through, it kind of feels like, tell me if I'm crazy, they're kind of still trying to figure out who they are, what they are at this point. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
No, I mean, I would agree with you. It is kind of crazy to think about because they're 3 albums deep at this point.
Yes.
Like these songs are off 3 different albums. And if you would think like when you do a set list like this, that you've had 4 or 5 albums, right? Like,
yeah,
but no, it's kind of crazy. Casablanca really put all their eggs in the basket for this album too. Like knowing that they were going to go bankrupt and this is what they tried to do to right the ship. It's kind of crazy.
It paid off, right? It paid off.
It did. Cold Gin's super fun. It's a great song. When they play it live, Paul's always like, "You guys got your drinks out there? Anyone drinking some cold gin?" And then they go into it.
And supposedly Paul's never been a big drinker. Supposedly,
no, he's
which is funny.
Apparently not. But yeah, that's what you all. That was. I know he's done that at least twice when I've seen him. So 2 out of 3 times.
Yeah. I love the groove of it. I cannot get enough of the groove. That hook is effing fantastic. And
Yeah, it's definitely got a groove to it. It's a real fun song. That one's up there, one of my favorite songs. I mean, it probably goes Black Diamond, Strutter, and Cold Gin for me.
And honestly, I can't say the vocals knock me out that much, but that groove, that hook saves it, man.
And then we've made it. We did not spend as much time on this album as we did Van Halen.
No.
For sure, but we're here. We're at the end.
So I got one for you. At number 13 at 4 minutes, Rock and Roll All Night, and then number 15, and then number 16, Let Me Go Rock and Roll at 5:43. Is Rock and Roll All Night their most well-known song of all time?
By far. It's definitely the one that gets the most radio play. Yeah. Like even now, like when you're listening to a classic rock station, generally if they play a Kiss song, it's going to be Rock and Roll All Night, which is unfortunate because they should be playing Strutter or Black Diamond instead.
Yeah.
Or Love Gun, which is not on this album. It's on Kiss Alive too. But
Rock and Roll All Night, there's a reason why they still play it, Chris. It is, my goodness. I mean, when you can get the crowd involved, that breakdown, when you keep, you keep on shouting, it's the breakdown, and Paul can say, "Come on," and then you can sing along with it.
Come on now, I can't hear you.
Yeah, dude, don't know if that was planned. Getting the crowd involved is such a great idea. I don't care what genre of music it is. Just give the people a fun time, man. Make them feel like they're part of the show. I don't know. I think there's something to be said for how they did that here,
This song is a super fun song to play on the guitar, and I'm sure it's on all instruments. It's fun, like if you play drums or bass. It's just a fun song to play as well. And I think that energy bleeds into what it becomes when a crowd's hearing it.
Yeah. It's straight up classic. I mean, I think it's there. You Shook Me All Night Long. And dude, I'm going to be honest with you. AC/DC, if you say name the most well-known AC/DC song of all time, I think you get 2 or 3 different answers. But with Kiss, I don't know, man. I kind of feel like Rock and Roll All Night would be the one. I think people who don't even know the band would go, "Oh, I've heard that before." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. It would either be that or Detroit Rock City.
Detroit Rock, great pull. Yeah, for sure. Love that song, by the way. Yeah. God of Thunder. You think God of Thunder would be, but I still think God of Thunder maybe is not as widely known, which I guess it depends on who you are, where you are when you grew up, I suppose. But
I mean, that's one of their. I would say that's probably one of their heaviest songs.
Yeah,
as far as like Kiss goes. But yeah, I mean, Detroit Rock City is classic, but that's Kiss Alive too. We haven't gotten there yet. We got one album in between there. Maybe we'll have to revisit it because there's some great songs in Kiss Alive too. Looking at that now.
And man, Let Me Go Rock and Roll, last track on the album. I mean, it's a little frenzied. It's going out there, man. But like, what a way to wrap up the album, right? Like, it makes a lot of sense. You'd end the album on this, I guess. I still think Black Diamond could have wrapped up the complete album, but
I wouldn't disagree with you, but it is great. It ends aside, right, of the LP. So if you're like I said, I think if you're looking at it like a set list, if that was the end of the set, and then they came out and did the encore, and the last song they give you is Rock and Roll All Night, you're going to be pretty happy. As if you're thinking about it from a live performance.
I got to be honest. Let Me Go Rock and Roll kind of feels like, couldn't we have just ended on Rock and Roll All Night? Like, did we have to end with? I don't know. It kind of felt like
I thought they were switched around. I thought it ended with Rock and Roll All Night. Am I wrong?
What I'm looking on Apple Music is Rock and Roll All Night, and then Let Me Go Rock and Roll.
Oh man, we're gonna need confirmation on this. Hold on. Let's see if I can pull that up.
Let's see here.
I'll pull it up on Amazon. And then,
track listing on the Wikipedia also lists it with Let Me Go Rock and Roll as the last track. Not to say they hadn't switched it.
No, Yeah, that's on the CD version. It's like that as well. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, then it would make more sense if they switched those two. Honestly, that's what I would have done at least. Chat GPT had the track listing as Rock and Roll All Night as the last track, which is what I was doing to generate the track list earlier, which has been spot on until we got here. So I wonder if that is got the old switcher. This album has been remastered and re-released several times. Let's see here. I'm getting kind of in the weeds over which might not necessarily find the original vinyl here. Does that have the track listing on the back? I don't think it does. Does it? No, the original track listing on the vinyl was Rock and Roll All Night and Let Me Go Rock and Roll. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, look, it has happened before, right? Let's see what was, and I used to know. I think it's on Led Zeppelin 4, I believe. And you know what? You probably know what I'm getting ready to say. It was no, not on Led Zeppelin 4.
4 is the one with the pinwheel vinyl cover.
4 is the one with it's the painting of the old man with the sticks on his back.
So which 3 I'm sure is the one with the pinwheel then. Yeah. Yes. So like Led Zeppelin 3, it has this like rotating like slide that you can move that fits into different pictures around the album. It's like a pinwheel. I think they all have that, unless I just have a weird promotional version, which would be nice because it looks like on eBay they're going for like $450.
Oh wow. Yeah. So. No, that sounds right. What you said sounds right. The Zeppelin album that has Living Loving Maid. You know what I'm getting ready to say, right? They on the radio they played those two songs back to back for years, but that's not the way they were on the original album.
Right.
And Zeppelin re-released it and put the songs together. They're like, screw it, just put them together. I think it's how, but I can't remember which album it was. I want to say it was House of the Holy that did that on?
No. Either way, I'm with you. I think we do that. You do. I would. The list I have here makes more sense. Rock and Roll All Night would be the one that I would either end with or begin with. Right? Like it almost makes sense to do it first.
Yeah.
Since you're going to rock and roll all night instead of end it and then.
No, I get it. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
You're no longer rocking. Right. Well, who am I to question Kiss?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Rock and roll all night, party every day. Drive home safe, kids. Thanks for coming. You know. Yeah.
I mean, this album had influenced a lot of artists. We already talked about, Dimebag and Pantera. Metallica famously with Lars and James have both talked about it. Scotty Ian from Anthrax, Mike McCready from Pearl Jam. Scotty Ian, I know, once said that like Kiss Alive made me want to be in a band. So that's to me, that's kind of like the highest prestige or album review you can get, right?
I would say so. Yeah, Led Zeppelin 2, Heartbreaker, followed by Living Loving Maid. Because I do not remember those two songs being linked, but then they re-released it later. I believe I got this right. And then they linked the two songs together.
I wonder one day if we'll ever get the original band with Gene and Paul, Wicked Lester, because there was an album recorded for that band, and they've always said that it was like along the lines of the Beatles or in the Who. Wow. So I'm curious on what that would have sounded like, because that would have been before Ace Frehley and Peter Criss joined, which is like 73, 74.
By the
way,
if
anyone has a leaked copy of Wicked Lester's unreleased album from Epic Records, please send that along to Tom, because I want to hear it.
What a great band name, Wicked! What a great Wicked! That's That's a great name. I don't know if it's better than Kiss, but Wicked Lizard's pretty awesome. Is that slang for something else, by the way, considering it's Kiss?
I don't know. Gene basically wanted something shorter
Ah.
that was easier to say in conversation.
So, speaking of the band name Kiss, I'm sure you have heard this. You grew up in the South as well. And we kicked the show off here today, kids, with this thought of don't be stereotyping us down here because we didn't all listen to bluegrass growing up. And if you did, that's fine, whatever. But when I was growing up, born and raised in Southern Baptist Church, is what it is. I was told that Kiss was code for Knights in Satan's Service. And also that AC/DC was Antichrist Devil Child. All right. I don't think either one of those is true, but even if it is, okay, what do you want from me? I mean, you call them up, call the band up and say, it's not nice. I don't know. What do you want? Like, I don't know. What about all the iconography with Kiss, man? Like Gene's the demon and there's blood and there's fire and it's the devil and it's a stage show, Chris. I don't understand. Like, this is vaudeville. It's the theater. It's kabuki theater for goodness. It's with guitars. I don't know what we're doing. Like, I don't know, man. Did you grow up around that kind of talk where you like, did you hear that stuff when you were growing up like in this band?
Not really, because I think all that had died down by like the 90s, right? So
yeah.
I mean, you had the Prince of Darkness Ozzy by that time. You had some like more dark metal by the time I was growing up. But it's something you've always heard: the Knight in Satan's Service, and play the album backwards, you'll hear the devil, and your head will spin or whatever. And to be fair, I mean, they leaned into that a bit.
Sure.
Like, they have no one to blame but themselves for that by making their stage show what it is, which is kind of a PG version of what Alice Cooper was doing to some extent. So you take what the New York Dolls and Alice Cooper was doing, dial it back a bit, you kind of get Kiss.
That's a good call. It's nothing more extreme. Well, I was getting ready to say Bowie. Bowie never went to that extreme, but Bowie had a very unique stage presence, and he was more of I don't know, artist, maybe I'll use the word, more dramatic, than he was like, and I don't think Kiss did anything shocking. If you knew the band, you knew the sparks were coming, the flame was coming, the blood was coming. You kind of expected it at a certain point, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like that's who the band was, man.
Yeah, they famously said when they made the idea that when they went about doing the makeup, it was like because of Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
In horror films, and that's kind of what they were going for. So people, anytime you do something like that in the 70s, you're going to have Christian mothers who are not going to be necessarily excited. Maybe they heard some of the lyrics, and that's really no, I'm kidding. But when they did their first live performance, I don't know if you ever heard this story where they had full makeup for the first time. Only like 3 people showed up, which is like crazy to think about now.
Yeah.
As someone who's been to multiple Kiss shows, but like, imagine being there in the full get up, makeup, everything, doing your stage show for like 3 people.
A little disheartening. I mean, speaking of their style and everything, I think the best album cover of all time by Kiss is Dressed to Kill.
It's classic. It's like it's kind of like, it's like Reservoir Dogs, but with face paint.
Yes.
Yeah, it's classic. It's a good one. Hotter Than Hell's cool too. I like the kind of like Japanese animated look of Hotter Than Hell's logo.
Yes. Well done. Yeah, dude. Like, it's like a logo kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. With the spinning faces, and that's you get the lasers shooting out of Ace's eyes on that logo too, which is pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome.
I know that like I'm assuming the reason they decided to do this album in the four cities they did is they spent so much time, like, because a lot of the album was recorded at Wildwood, New Jersey, like we were talking about at the beginning of the
Mhm.
show. But like when they first started, they were just performing in like small clubs in New York and New Jersey, doing this act
Mm.
before they got noticed. So like nowadays, if you released 3 albums and none of them hit for like a semi-major label, like you would just be done, right? Like I don't even think you make it to 3 albums.
And also, like, it's not entirely the same, but like Peter Frampton had always been in bands, right? And he was a respected guitarist. And in the industry, uh, they loved him. Like they say, he's a great player. He's a great guy. He's he works hard. He just wants to play. But then when he goes solo, his first shot out of the gate is Frampton Comes Alive. You're like, wait a minute, what? And that album
Yeah.
does monster effing business and puts him on the map. It's almost like, to your point, so the Breakout's the live album? Like, so it's happened before, but I don't, honestly, maybe I'm wrong, but you could it's probably under 10 that it's been the breakout, defined as the breakout, what puts someone on the map. Maybe under 10 artists of all time, maybe?
Yeah, like usually by the sophomore album, you kind of know what the band is going to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's crazy. I mean, I think it's a testament to how dedicated they were to the band and how good they were at marketing, which did pay off later in merchandise and all of that stuff. Because at one point in time, they were just grinding, which,
Yeah.
you got to have a lot of respect for. The kind of scrappy, unknown band coming up and making it big on their their like fourth album as a live album, playing the stuff off their first 3 albums.
So,
It's just a kind of a crazy story for an album that became so influential and is so well known.
and by the way, dude, we're doing all these biopics. Where's the Kiss movie, man? It feels like this would be, there's so many elements in it. Like, you got the George, you got the Paul and Gene thing where it feels like they are, they're the captains of this, and they come out through the years and say the band members don't matter. It's the images, it's the group collective. And I'm like, all right, I guess, but like, I don't know, man. You think that'd make an amazing film if it was done right? Like, by the way, do you agree? Do you agree with that sentiment that it doesn't matter who's in the band because what matters is the image and everything that goes along with her? Do you think it's? I mean, you're a musician. I'm sure I know what your answer is going to be. It matters who's playing, doesn't it?
I mean, I think it very much matters to the fans of the original albums.
Ooh, well said. Yeah.
Because like, even if the new stuff was great, people are always going to be like, I mean, you see it with Metallica, right? Like with Cliff Burton, for instance. They replaced Cliff
Yeah.
Burton because he died, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And Miller always will say Cliff Burton is the best bass player Metallica ever had. Well, I mean, okay. But it's one of those things where it's always going to be there. So regardless, like I said, like Eric Carr is a better drummer than Peter Criss. Does it matter to fans of that band who love those original, first 4 or 5 albums? I don't think so. I think they would rather see the original lineup, because the original lineup is what created that music. And that's where it kind of becomes a harder thing.
I've been a part of conversations before with fans who are fans of, well, look, hey, this is not on you or anything. You are very much not a Sammy Hagar guy. You're very much a David Lee Roth guy with Van Halen. And there's other examples of bands where the fans are like, nope, I walked away, or I didn't listen to them until this guy got there or till this girl got there. So, it's probably way more widespread than we're mentioning at the moment. So I can kind of understand that. I mean, dude, I'm still an Ace guy. Again, I respect the guys that came after him, and I respect that there's some great players. I'm sure probably much better than him, but I got a soft spot in my heart for Ace and Peter both, man. It's just how I feel,
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, the other thing is like all of the Kiss stuff that people really love is with those original members. And when those original members start leaving the band, that's when you get into like your Unmasked an 80s and 90s Kiss,
Mm-hmm.
which people are not really fans of. Other than the diehard Kiss fans that are just going to be fans of whatever Kiss. I mean, it's the same thing with Metallica, right? Like a lot of people haven't liked anything Metallica's done in years and years and years. So
Yeah, it's true. That's true. Yeah.
there is a TV special I have not watched this called Kisstory, and I wonder how much of that goes into the band. But I know it's heavily focused on Paul and Gene, so knowing the kind of interviews they've given over the years, I think it will probably be much more of the same. But A&E did do a like 4 or 5 part TV series about the band.
That sounds very familiar, but I have not seen it. And I'll tell you this. Look, when you control the narrative and you control everything that comes out, you're never going to get the real story. I mean, and look, maybe their story is the real story. Maybe they're 100% true. And it's what, but dude, it's still not doing service. You need a third party who can get all the facts from all the band members to paint a true picture. And maybe that book exists somewhere, Chris, that I'm not aware of.
Probably, I would think so. With Ace still being around, I would think so. But the big thing is that Gene and Paul are the two that didn't really seem to have any drug or alcohol issues, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And they also seem to be the ones that are most in touch with the business side of things, which is why they kind of get crapped on in comparison to some of the other members sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's getting to the point where you can't do your job, sometimes you have to cut bait with those members. Unfortunately, with Kiss, it's kind of like they haven't done anything since their big 70s run to make you want to hear necessarily anything new with new members. The problem with I think the newer members is that Kiss didn't really release any good music after the 70s. So it's a lot easier to look at that and say, okay, well, you guys got rid of this problem, but by replacing these members, you also didn't put out any good music. And I think that's how fans of the original iteration of Kiss feel. I mean, you hear a lot of that, even if you go back and watch those old VH1 behind the musics, or not behind the music, but whatever, like I love the 80s, or I love the 80s when they talk about Kiss unmasking. Like that was part of it, but you also have a different drummer. That's kind of the descent, I think.
So you feel that way, like all their good stuff was in the 70s, and after that it was just kind of eh?
Yeah, I mean, God, I'm trying to think of the last Kiss album I actually listened to. I think it was Sonic Boom, right?
Oh, wow.
Which is an okay album. That came out in 2009.
Yeah.
But there wasn't anything, crazy great on that album. Kiss Psycho Circus was okay.
Yeah, I remember that one.
But I don't, they're one of those bands that just, I think they release so much content so quickly that you get kind of one of those things where it's like, well, where do you go from there? Like we're just talking about this. They released 3 albums before Kiss Alive. They released 3 live albums right after Kiss Alive comes out. You get Love Gun in between there. You get the solo albums. You get Dynasty. I mean, that's a lot of content in such a short gap from 73 till like 1980.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I think one of the best tunes that they did post 70s was War Machine. I love that freaking song, dude. That was the one. Remember Warlord and back in Crockett era?
Yeah.
Warlord used that in the Crockett territory, man. It's a great entrance song. So,
I mean, yeah. I guess the last song I liked of theirs was either Russian Roulette or When Lightning Strikes. Those are both off Sonic Boom.
Oh wow!
Which Sonic Boom has like kind of a
I'm a
it's
70s,
kind of
80s,
weird in its own way because it was like
sure,
a Walmart specific release to begin with, which always gets weird, kind of like Walmart releases and Target releases.
Yeah, I know those. Yeah.
Sonic Boom, also the cover of that album leans into their theory that it's more about the image because it's more cartoony. It's kind of like it kind of alludes back to Hotter Than Hell a little bit with the album cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. We'll have to dive into Kiss as a band for an episode, which we've said a lot of it here today. But if we keep going, we'll be here another hour and a half. But because there's so much ground to cover, man. Like they did influence guys that came after them, and the legacy they're leaving behind is pretty immense. I mean, no one's ever going to be able to match that stage show. I mean, I guess you can take a crack at it, but I imagine it'd be pretty darn tough to do. But well, kids, we'll see if we jump into that at some point. As you guys know, we cover a little bit of everything here on the 6M, and who knows, we may do a Kiss specific episode at some point. We've done it before with bands, and then done their albums as well. So we shall see. But Chris, until we get there, let me get your last word on Kiss Alive.
It's a really fun album. I think I like Alive 2 the best out of the Alive albums. That being said, this is the only one I don't think Alive 3 has. Double check that track list first. Yeah, Alive is the only one that has Black Diamond on it, so I'm going to be a little jaded as far as that goes. It's a fun album. I still love this band. Like I said, they're fun. They're just a fun band to me as far as the entire look, the stage show. I've seen them many times. If you've never listened to a Kiss album, I don't know that this would be the starting point. I'd probably go Kiss Alive 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good listen. If you're a Kiss fan and you haven't listened to it in a while, I would say, yeah, go back and give it a listen.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's definitely a classic Kiss, and this started the trilogy of Alive albums that, once again, had this album not been produced, I don't know where we'd be today with this band. They may not have made it. It may have been they just kept kind of plugging away and just couldn't get, like, Chris, is it fair to say if this album doesn't hit that they would have been an underground band at best, perhaps?
Yeah, you would think so, because they could only tour on those 3 albums, unless they got picked up by a different record label. So like we kind of said at the beginning, if this album doesn't hit, not only do they fold, but maybe Casablanca folds as a record label.
Yeah,
so
good point.
It's a tough one. It's crazy because it is kind of like underdog tale to what became the giant marketing machine that is Kiss.
It really is. Well, kids, there you have it. Go out and grab you some Kiss condoms and get that Kiss off coffin ordered. If you're gonna go out in style, I imagine. I don't know. But that's what we got for you, folks. There'll be more Kiss on the way, I'm sure, in some form. We'll grab another album or perhaps do the band, as we said before. We shall see. Stay tuned for that. But as always, thanks for checking us out. Be sure to follow us on the socials and to also subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And there'll be some more great content to come, new episodes every week. And thanks again for checking us out. So in the meantime, at least for now, that is Kiss Alive. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.